Howdy freeze dryers, welcome back to the Live Life Simple Kitchen. Today we're making one of my favorite recipes. I've never done a freeze drying video on it, so I'm going to share that with you today. It's a good recipe because the weather's cooling off, it's football season. This is just something that warms you from the inside out, and of course that would be freeze-dried chili. And this chili is my award-winning chili, which we're going to freeze dry, so it's going to be an award-winning freeze-dried chili. Let's get right to it. So I love this recipe because it is so simple, and I make mine in an Instant Pot. It's usually done in about half an hour, so you can throw it together really quick. Ingredients are very simple. Most of these ingredients you could, or actually all of the ingredients, you could also take from your dry ingredient storage and do individual freeze-dried ingredients and throw this together that way if you wanted to. Today we're doing ours in the Instant Pot. You could also do it in a slow cooker if you wanted to. If you're gonna do it in a slow cooker, I would probably recommend about 3 to 4 hours for all of these ingredients. So normally when I do my award-winning chili, I start with 6 strips of bacon and I go to saute on the Instant Pot, and I cook the bacon in the Instant Pot and I leave the grease and all that stuff in the chili. That's kind of the base. But because we're doing freeze drying, I don't want to do that because it's just not going to store long-term well, and I'm going into long-term storage with this. So if you want to do bacon, or if you're just not freeze drying this, I'll show you later on when you can add it in to the rest of the mix. But in the meantime, we're going to cut up 1 large bell pepper. You can do whichever color you want. I'm doing a red pepper today. And then we're going to do 1 large onion as well. So now that our onions and our peppers are diced up, we're going to come over to our Instant Pot. We're going to go to saute because we want this to warm up. We're going to saute those onions and peppers in the Instant Pot. In the meantime, let's get 1.5 pounds of ground beef going. We want our 1.5 pounds of ground beef in a separate pan, and that way we can control the amount of grease and extra fat that comes off of it, because we're going to take the necessary precautions to separate all of that so we can add it into our long-term storage. And once our Instant Pot is hot, we're going to add just a little bit of broth to the bottom of the Instant Pot. Then we're going to add our onions and our peppers to that. And normally I would use oil, but obviously we don't want to use oil for freeze drying. We're going to saute those for a little bit until they are soft and tender, and then we're going to add some extra ingredients. All right, well, we're waiting for all of that to cook. We're going to do a 15-ounce can of kidney beans. We're going to do a 15-ounce can of pinto beans, and then a 15-ounce can of black beans. We want these all to be drained, and then we're going to rinse them and get those ready to add to our Instant Pot. Okay, now that our beef is browned, I would recommend putting it in a colander and rinsing it, whether you do that in your sink. I know some people don't like to do that. You can do it outside or however you want to rinse it off. I recommend rinsing the grease off if you want to store it long term, because beef, especially if beef usually has quite a bit of fat in it, which equates to something that's gonna go rancid at some point. Whether that's 2 years from now or 10 years from now, I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, if you don't do it right. I also like to add the ground beef to a paper towel lined plate, and then I kind of try and blot off some of the extra grease, fat, etc. before we add it to our chili. So your Instant Pot should be off at this point after your onions and your peppers are sauteed. We're then gonna add 2 cups of the broth of your choice, and then add your cooked ground beef, as well as your bacon if you're gonna do bacon at this point. And then to that we're gonna add our 3 cans of beans, the pinto, the black, and the kidney beans, as well as a 15-ounce can of fire roasted diced tomatoes. And then if you're up for it, you can add some jalapenos. I'm using some diced freeze-dried jalapenos. I wouldn't recommend going over 1 jalapeno or you're gonna overpower the chili. And then before we get into adding all of the magic spices, which is really what makes this chili stand out, I think, from just everyone else's chili, is 6 ounces of tomato paste. And then let's put together our spices. And that spice mixture is just gonna start with a tablespoon of dried oregano, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, 2 teaspoons of salt, teaspoon of pepper, teaspoon of smoked paprika, 2 tablespoons of chili powder. We're gonna add that to our mixture in the Instant Pot, and then we're gonna add a tablespoon of minced garlic and a tablespoon of Worcestershire. We're gonna mix this all together before we put our lid on, and we should have some freeze-dried recipe magic here in about 30 minutes. So put your lid on, and if your Instant Pot has a chili setting or a bean setting, I would take it down to 20 minutes and you should be good to go. So after your time is up, you don't really need to release because it doesn't really build up a whole lot of pressure usually. So we don't need to do a slow release or anything like that. I have noticed that for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just this recipe or with the bean setting, you can get a food burn warning on the Instant Pot. If that's the case, just pull the lid, mix it up real quick, throw the lid back on, and kind of just carry on. But here's our finished product. I'm not sure how far this is gonna go on our trays. Hopefully it'll get us a couple medium trays. And this makes a pretty thick chili, which I think is the only way to do it. We're gonna go on to parchment lined trays. And I really want to make sure that I'm getting everything evenly distributed because we're gonna make a freeze drying recipe out of this, and you want everything to be very consistent. So we ended up with about 1 2/3 with that one recipe. That's about the maximum I like to put in my Instant Pot. So I'm also gonna pop in the tray dividers in 10 portion. I think 2 of these will probably get us a pretty good serving size. That's what we're gonna base this recipe off of. I'm gonna throw a lid on, and then we're gonna go into the deep freeze. I think it's very important to pre-freeze in a deep freeze stews and soups and liquids. I think it just turns out a whole lot better. And just so you know, I only go up to the top of the lip of a tray. I've always done it that way. I've never ever had problems with stuff not getting all the way freeze dried. I rarely have to add extra time. A lot of times when you see people adding extra time, it's because, in my opinion, they're adding too much to the tray. So I'll do a couple more batches of this, we'll throw it in the deep freeze, and then we'll go from there. I'll meet you at the freeze dryer tomorrow. All right, we're gonna go ahead and grab a pre-freeze dried weight on these. Our first tray is gonna be 23.24. Second tray is 21.18. Third tray is 21.52. And our fourth tray, 21.32. So go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done that already. It's just Live Life Simple. We do primarily freeze drying on this channel, a little bit of food preservation, a little bit of homesteading, a little bit of gardening. And while you're there, make sure you click that bell to get notifications. That'll send you a notification every time we release a new video. For us, that's Sundays 8 a.m. And if you like the content we provide, make sure you let us know by giving us a thumbs up. And if you have any questions about freeze drying, make sure you join our social media groups. We have a Facebook group and we have a MeWe group. And you can find that by searching Retired at 40's freeze drying group. And our freeze drying chili recipe, as well as over 170 other recipes, can be found at the freeze drying cookbook. It's just freezedryingcookbook.com. And if you're ready to purchase a freeze dryer, please consider using our affiliate link. That can be found down below in the description. And that lets Harvest Right know that we sent you there with all of our information. And as a thank you from them, that sends us a small commission. We take that commission and we roll it back into the groups. We roll it back into the YouTube channel, and we also roll it back into developing products for freezedryingsupplies.com. And our goal with that is to streamline the whole freeze drying process. And through the magic of YouTube, I'm gonna streamline that whole freeze drying process right now. We finished up at 36 hours and 9 minutes. Our kilowatt usage was 22.85 kilowatt hours. I'm gonna make sure that all of our trays are warm to the touch on the bottom. And it feels like they all are. This bottom tray, if you've never experienced this, is usually not as warm as the rest of them, unless these have been in for a very long time with extra dry time. And before I bag these up in our new freeze drying supplies Mylar, I'm gonna get a weight on all of these. So we have 1036, 1040, 1104, and 1184. And I think a good amount with our 10 portion dividers is probably 4 of these would be 2 servings, I think. Depends on how big you want your serving sizes. I'm gonna put 4 of these portions in one bag. And if you haven't seen the new bags, these are our new freeze drying supplies, made in the USA, Mylar bags. They're 8 by 12, 1 quart. They have a label on them. They're also gusseted on the bottom. They're zippered at the top. They also have a hang tag, which I have never seen on another food storage bag other than ours. If I did my calculations correct, one of our portions, which would be 1/10 of the medium tray, should need about half a cup of water. It ended up being about 109 grams of water, which I think a half a cup is like 118, so it's real close. We'll just call it a half a cup. That will give you a great baseline for where you need to be. We're gonna let this sit on here. I'm gonna mix it up, I'm gonna cover it, and then we will let it sit for 3 to 5 minutes. And the thing that we need to be careful about is the beans typically take the longest to freeze dry. It's hard to get them all the way saturated with water. That's why we need to let it sit for a bit. And usually 3 to 5 minutes covered will do that. This has been sitting for 5 minutes now. And look at that. That looks like fresh chili that just came out of the Instant Pot. I love chili, I love soups and stews because they always do so well. Beans could stand sitting a little bit longer, I think. I would probably recommend 5 minutes, stir it, and then cover it again for another 3 to 5 minutes. I think those beans should be totally fine. Another thing to think about before I let you go today is you could also freeze dry some toppings for this. So you could do some cilantro, some cheddar cheese, sour cream, whatever you like on your chili. You know, maybe do a tray of just add-ons for your toppings. I think that would be pretty awesome. Sour cream does well, cheese does well. But chili is a total winner and one of my personal favorites. Thanks for hanging out with me today. In the meantime, remember to live life simple. Catch you next week.